This week, we give our first impressions of the 2021 Hyundai Elantra, why so many new cars lack a traditional bumper, and should a driver in Florida buy a car that spent its life in Alaska? Next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
So this week we're going to just jump right into talking about cars. That's what we love doing. So we're going to start with what we're driving this week at the test track. And this week we're going to be talking about the 2021 Hyundai Elantra. Now this is an all-new version of this compact car. It's the 7th generation of the Elantra. And this is a car that competes against things like the Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, Nissan Sentra, Mazda 3, Volkswagen Jetta, cars like that. This new car is a little bit longer, a little bit wider, a little bit lower than the outgoing car. And the base engine, which is the engine that we have in our test car, is 147 horsepower, 2-liter 4-cylinder with a continuously variable transmission, or CVT. The Elantra N-Line has a 201 horsepower, 1.6-liter turbo 4-cylinder, and there's also a hybrid model. So we bought a 2021 Elantra SEL. We added the convenience package. That brings, for $950, you actually get quite a lot of stuff. There's a larger instrument cluster for the driver, adaptive cruise control, leather-wrapped steering wheel and shifter, heated front seats, and a wireless cell phone charging pad. So total purchase price with the $995 destination charge, $23,000 even. So let's get into it. Ryan, let's start with you. Let's talk about the car's driving dynamics, things like powertrain, handling, ride. These are our first impressions. We're going to have a first drive up on this car. It's in our test program. What do you think of the car so far?
So my very first thoughts when I left the gate at the track and headed out on the roads was, this is a CVT? Or is this a regular transmission? Until I stepped on the throttle all the way to the floor for a brief moment, I didn't know what it was. A low RPM, normal driving, the average person, they would struggle to figure out if this was a CVT. This is a good thing. That's what I'm getting at. It behaves like a regular transmission. You need to get on the throttle to merge onto the highway or, jump into traffic while at speed. It does flare a little bit, has some of that notorious CVT characteristic, but in general, it's really impressive. Around town, it's super smooth, it's responsive, it mimics shifts of a traditional transmission. I was impressed with that. Handling, it's a smaller car, so naturally it's easy to place on the road. I think the steering was a little light. This car isn't sporty, in my opinion, but it's fun to drive around. It's easy to maneuver. I really don't have any issues there. Ride-wise, I think it's firm. It's not a Corolla, or it lacks the compliance of, say, like a Subaru Impreza. It's got a good firm edge to it. For $23,000, there's a lot of car here, and I think for it to be stiff in this category of cars is not like unheard of. Like, this is kind of typical, really. But there are some softer cars out there.
Right, totally agree. It feels like a more grown-up version of the Elantra.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree with you with this continuously variable transmission. I think 9 out of 10 people, if they get in and drive this car, if they didn't know it had a CVT, they wouldn't know it had a CVT. When we talk about the downsides to the CVTs, well, the upside is they usually get really good fuel economy. The downside,
there's a reason they're doing that.
Right. The downside is the drivability. They're kind of known for this rubber banding. That's when you get on the throttle even mildly hard, and it's like, that's my CVT impersonation. And
that's literally how he teaches me about CVTs, sound effects and all.
But this one mimics shifts. So you're driving it, and as you accelerate, it keeps bringing the revs down, as a traditional automatic would. And as far as CVTs goes, it's one of the best tuned ones I think we've driven. And so
and what we found, back to the CVT for a second, what we found over the years is typically a CVT that's mated to a more powerful engine, the V6 or something, takes away some of that sling rubber banding,
right,
like you just said. This car has enough power, but it's not a muscle car by any means, and it still does well, and I think that's commendable.
I think that's your point. Yeah, it's still able to be refined without having
Exactly.
power to kind of mask the downsides to the CVT. Right. And I also agree, as far as it is a little on the firm side as far as the ride, but it's a little behind, the top cars in the class maybe, but I think most people will think it's totally livable. Before we go on, just want to make sure, Doc Ems, do you agree with, I don't want to say it's totally livable and you're like, man, this is the harshest riding car ever. Did you think it rode okay, or?
No, I enjoyed it. I didn't, I took it around the track and I took it through our rec road, which has considerable bumps and twists and turns. And, I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting like jarred out of out of my head over here. I actually really liked driving it for like the little while that I had it. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it handled nicely. The interior is pretty nice. At least like up front, the dash area, whatever. They try to make it look really sleek with like the big screens.
It's got what we call showroom appeal. You get in, especially because we have the larger instrument cluster. It it almost looks like one giant horizontal screen between the instrument cluster and the touch infotainment touchscreen. And then they also angled the center stack toward the driver, and they sort of have the center console has a little bit of a sort of panel in between, separating the driver from the passenger. It kind of makes it feel a little sporty, don't you think?
Yeah, it has appeal for sure in terms of like aesthetics, and it feels nice, like for an Elantra, right? It's just this like kind of normal sedan. It's not like it's an out of this world kind of car or whatever, but it still feels pretty nice inside. But then when you were rattling off all the things about the convenience package, one of the things that I noticed, and even when I was in the car, I noticed because, I'm a shorter driver. I'm average at best at my height, but I have to adjust the seats. And there's no power adjustment for the convenience package, which seems really odd when I do have heated seats in the convenience package.
Right.
So
it's a bit inconvenient.
It's not as convenient as it maybe implies, right?
Yes, I'm like, that seemed like, kind of one of the key areas to add for convenience.
Right.
So that was definitely kind of a little annoying. I was like, okay. But I do like these other sort of like, they might be small little features to other people, but, to me, they kind of make a big deal because they're just practical, in my opinion. Like on the front passenger side, Hyundai puts this little like pocket next to the center console that you can like throw your phone into. It's like just big enough to like stash a phone, stash a wallet or something.
It's a thoughtful touch. Someone put some thought into that.
Right. Things like that. The little armrest thing that you were talking about that kind of separates the driver's side from the front passenger side. I sat over there and at first I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. I can like sort of grip this like it's an armrest handle. But then it also felt like a little constricting. Like I was like being told I had to stay in my front passenger space. Like I couldn't like spread out quite. But, things like that are just, I had to go check the trunk for something when I was doing my evaluation. And there was an actual trunk release button. So I don't know. Yes, like small things. It's the small things that make me really happy about these cars.
No, that makes sense.
Do you guys remember the Sonata that we had for like a little while? Okay.
Yeah.
So that Sonata had like this hidden button in the middle of the Hyundai logo that I could not find. Like I thought the car had no external trunk release and I was going out of my mind trying to evaluate this car. I was so annoyed that every time I had to go pop the trunk from the front. And then finally Gabe was like, no, there's a hidden button. And I'm like, of course, Gabe would know there's a hidden button. So this time I was like doing like a little victory dance because there was an actual button that I could see with my own eyes.
Right.
So,
What about like the controls in the infotainment system? Did you have any issues with that, or it's pretty straightforward?
They're pretty straightforward, right? I did think that it was a little bit odd, unless I did it completely wrong, was I had to go through more steps to like hook up my CarPlay. So usually they're just sort of like plug and play and, the Hyundai infotainment system like automatically just projects your screen. But this time I had to go through more of my settings to like enable Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever it was. And so it wasn't as like seamless as I'm accustomed to. I really am accustomed to just like when I have to rent a car, I typically choose a Hyundai because I can just plug and play and it's totally easy to do. So that was a little bit more cumbersome than usual, but in general, I do tend to love the Hyundai controls because they are really simple. Like there's knobs where there should be knobs. everything is where I think it should be. My stocks, they do the things that they should. They're not trying to do things that make no sense to me or completely unintuitive.
Right.
Which maybe it's just like my generation of driver where it's like, I expect that this stock on the left should do this thing and this stock on the right should do this thing and not suddenly be my gear shift or whatever it is,
So for me, I found like that the headroom was pretty decent, even though it's a small car. The center console, we go on about center consoles a lot and how do they hem in your right knee or do they not? And this one hems in my right knee a little bit, but it's a little lower than some center consoles. So it's more the bottom part of my knee, not the side of my knee.
What did you think about the slope on the door?
The door
on the driver's side door. Yeah, like the armrest, how all the it slopes down, right? And so like all of your controls for like windows and locking and stuff, they're kind of like down.
Oh, that didn't bother me. That didn't bother me. Did it actually bother you, or did you like it?
No, I didn't mind it as much as I thought it would. I think in other cars, even though they were like, I've been in others where they had the slope, but the buttons were like way at the far end of it. So it was kind of still like I had to pay a lot of attention to where I was putting my hand to be able to find what I needed. Right. But this one wasn't that bad. I was just curious what you guys thought about that.
Yeah. And Ryan, you're a bigger guy. So I fit in the front seat. Okay. How about you? I know you've got those long legs.
I felt a little high. I couldn't get quite low enough. I'm longer in the torso, I think, for seating position wise. So I find myself trying to lower the seat in most cars. So it wasn't bad. There's enough room for me. One thing that did drive me nuts is the rear trunk lid, the rear deck above the rear seat.
Like
it's really hot.
Yeah. Like the rear visibility is not like...
It's not that great.
No.
Right. Yeah, the other thing is that if you're, the car's pretty low, and if you're maybe getting on in years or not that flexible, this may not be a great car for you because it does take a little effort getting in and out, especially out of the rear seat, but even out of the front seat, it's a little difficult.
That rear seat cushion is like flat and low. Like the car's already low, and then the cushion itself is pretty low too, so you don't really get, it might be kind of an awkward angle back there.
Right. The car's... If you look at the car closely, you can see that it's got a lot of angles and creases on the outside. They really tried hard with the styling. I don't think they show up that well, though, with our test car's gray paint. I think kind of hides that, as well as the black wheels. I actually like black wheels. I don't think it works in this particular car. Do you guys like the styling? Do you even notice the styling, or is that gray paint kind of hiding all the creases and curves?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a kind of mundane, being that with that color with the black wheels. It's if it was like a blue or something, it would be.
I agree.
It's still a sharper color, but we obviously don't rate that. So
right. Okay, so we always like to talk about advanced driver assistance features, and this one has a lot of standard features: forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic warning, lane departure warning, and lane keeping assistance. So we're happy about that. Just want to remind, this is our initial impressions. We have a first drive on the website that you can check out, and the car will be going through our test program. So we'll have full road test results soon. And you can find all those, of course, on consumerreports.org. Before we move on to our next segment, just want to take a brief moment to talk about a potential giving moment for you folks out there. We want to talk about the Talking Cars donation program. If you're not aware, Consumer Reports is a nonprofit organization. The work we do is funded by memberships as well as donations. So if you're able to give some money, it would really help us out. It would help us to keep doing all the things we do, including this show. So you can find out more about this program at cr.org/give Talking Cars. And now, back to the show. So we're going to move on to audience questions. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. And speaking of video questions, we're going to start off with one from Nelson, who has a question about bumpers. So let's take a look at this.
Hey, CR. Are bumpers still under the 2.5 mile per hour standard, where it was reduced from the Reagan administration's 5 mile per hour standard that it was previously? And I know that those standards apply to cars. I mean, SUVs and trucks make so much more of the market now. Shouldn't those be covered as well by now? And the standard before, I know that, the damage, there wasn't supposed to be damage at that low speed. But now, is damage allowed to the bumpers at that speed now, 2.5 miles per hour? So it won't protect sensors or the lights that are in those bumpers now if they get hit at 2 miles per hour. And there's no bumpers on these Mazdas or Genesis. So how do those get protected? I mean, you just see a grill, it's just going to get damaged. It was back in the 80s that Consumer Reports had tested bumpers to see if they met requirements, and I don't see Consumer Reports testing these bumpers at all anymore. So just wanted your thoughts on that. Thank you.
All right, Ryan, let's start with you. What can you tell us about current bumper standards, as well as we used to have do some bumper testing at CR, right? What happened to that program?
So we used to have a bumper basher at the track, and we would do a 5 mile per hour on center collision, and then offset at 5 miles per hour. And then we would do 3 miles per hour into the corners. We don't do this any longer. We let the government do this testing. They're just better equipped to do it than we are. And so now, back in the day, cars used to have the bumper was external. You could see this thing hanging out off the car. It did its job. It was easier to fix because it was you just could replace that bumper. Nowadays, obviously, with the quest for fuel economy and styling and safety, the bumper is now just this big plastic thing, right? Then behind that, there'll be a layer of some sort of foam. And then behind that is an actual bumper. The bumper's job is to protect the car from getting really damaged beyond that point. Now you have this car with this beautiful big grill on it, and then all these little sensors everywhere. And you hit it at 2.5 miles per hour, and you crack the plastic and maybe move a sensor or crack the foam but underneath it. Nowadays, a good bumper, you hit a bumper pretty good, it's an insurance claim, probably. I mean, it's not, you're no longer paying out of pocket for this quick little thing, because there's a lot that goes into it, and you have to get stuff aligned, and it turns into a whole rigmarole.
Right. All right. So fender benders are getting expensive. Anyway, let's move on to, but at least the cars are still safe. That's the important thing. Let's move on to another question. This one comes from Chris from Salt Lake City, Utah. Chris says, I just read a recent report published by the U.S. House of Representatives regarding child booster seat safety. It asserts that companies advertising 30-pound minimum weights and self-reporting side impact test results are not reliable. I know that CR conducts robust independent front impact testing for car seats, but are side impact tests being considered? Also, are you planning to update your published minimum weights for booster seats in your online ratings? Doc Ems, you are our child seat point person here at CR. So first, can you tell us a little bit about the report and what is CR doing now? Oh, and there's Micah. Hi, Micah.
Hey, buddy.
Just in time to talk about car seats. So the report, I just want to kind of clarify what what was said in the report. So it highlighted the fact that many car seat manufacturers are maintaining a 30-pound minimum for booster seats, which is pretty low. In Canada, for instance, the minimum weight is 40 pounds, and that's regulated by their transportation, aspect of the government. And here in the US, NHTSA says that the minimum can be 30 pounds, which people have been really trying to push that up to at least 40 pounds. So one, even though we know that there's data that says that, 30 pounds is really low, really kids at 30 pounds should not be in booster seats. That's currently what the standard is. And car seat manufacturers can obviously make it higher than that minimum, but they've chosen not to. So it was kind of highlighting which ones have chosen not to do this. And then it was talking about these side impact protection claims that manufacturers make. And the reason that those are unreliable, as Chris from Salt Lake City has said, is because there is no regulatory side impact standard for car seats. So manufacturers have essentially developed their own tests in-house, which are all proprietary, and they are saying that, okay, our seat meets or exceeds our side impact testing, but we have nothing to compare it to because there is no regulatory standard. There's nothing for us to say like, okay, the test that you're running has a comparable result that we can, say like, it's just isolated by itself, right? It's almost like there's no peer review for it.
Right.
And so we can't really just go by what the manufacturer says for that because we can't compare it to a standard for one, right? There's no minimum standard of safety that they have to meet for side impact testing. And then two, since the tests are proprietary and the results are too, we don't actually know what that means, right? We don't know what that safety looks like. So, CR did some coverage around this story, and it kind of really is giving parents advice about when is the right time to move your child into a booster seat or move them out of one. And really, the biggest piece of advice that we can give you is for any transition that you're making, whether it's going from rear facing to forward facing or going from a harness, a forward facing harness to a booster seat, don't go by the minimums for the next stage. Right? You want to make sure that you're keeping your child in their current seat, current orientation, current installation type, whether it's harness, up to the maximum height or weight limits for that seat. Then make the transition. Don't be in a rush to make those transitions, because every time you do, it's a slight downgrade in safety. So you really want to maximize the amount of safety that your child is getting and the protection that they're getting in the stage that they're in, rather than just kind of jumping ahead. And that's kind of one way to get around those things. Chris is asking about what we're doing. So Consumer Reports does have our own car seat crash test for frontal impacts only. We are currently working to develop a side impact test. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they proposed a side impact test for car seats. It hasn't gone to final rule yet. Most likely, our CR's test will have many similarities with the NHTSA test, because we've been following along with their research and development, and kind of we're in step with the changes that they've been making to make it more representative of a real world crash and real world vehicle geometries. But there will probably be also some key differences in what our test looks like versus the regulatory test, which is important, which is what you want. The regulatory test, remember, is providing you with that minimum standard of safety. And then consumer information programs like ours is trying to help you delineate, now that all the seats have passed the minimum standard, what highlights the differences? What are these additional margins of safety that these seats can provide to help you make a better informed choice as you purchase seats for your kids? One of the things that the report talked about also is some manufacturers have decided that they're going to change the minimum weights on their booster seats. So they've said that, they maybe changed it on their website, or they've said that they're going to do this. So would we also update our ratings for that? In general, we only update our ratings if we can purchase a sample at retail that shows the changes that they are saying. So we don't ever just take the manufacturer's word for it, right? We want to be able to prove that you as a consumer are going to actually be benefiting from this change that they are asserting. So in order for us to update our ratings, we would have to purchase samples, we would have to verify it for ourselves, and then only you would see those changes reflected in our model pages. But thank you, Chris, because I love car seat questions.
I think bottom line, for all things child seat related, go to consumerreports.org. You're going to see lots of great information up there. Let's move on to another question. This one comes from Brett from Long Island, New York. And Brett says, how much softer of a ride do smaller wheeled cars have versus those with larger diameter wheels with less tire sidewall? It seems to me it makes a big difference in the softness of the ride, but is that real or just in my head? Ryan, tire tester extraordinaire, is Brett going crazy, or is this really true?
So we don't measure this objectively, but subjectively, we have seen, a tire and wheel package with more sidewall on the tire ride a little better than, say, a low profile tire, meaning there's less sidewall. So if you had the same one car, we have a Toyota Camry right now. We have a 65 series sidewall tire. It has more sidewall, and then we have a 45 series sidewall, which is less sidewall. Same overall diameter, same style wheels, but obviously one's a 16-inch wheel, one's an 18-inch wheel. Okay. On that same car, the lower profile tire, the 45 series, rides stiffer than the 65 series sidewall, right? Okay, that's just a generic thing. There are cars out there that are designed to have a big wheel on it. So that when their engineers are designing this car, they design the suspension a little to accommodate some of that stuff. And then it depends on the type of car. If it's a real sports car, it's going to be stiffer just because that's advantageous for crisp handling, right, and all that stuff. So, a good example is our Porsche Taycan that we have. That has huge wheels on it. I mean, I don't even know what size. They're like 20-inch wheels. That car rides quite well. But it was designed that way. It's a heavier car, was designed that way. But yeah, in general, I mean, it's almost common sense in a sense. It's more rubber, cushions more. And it's a little less work the suspension has to do itself.
Right.
But they could tune the car, right? Like,
Yeah, they can totally work with the suspension to make it work better with the bigger wheels. But if just on a case-to-case basis, yeah, you go bigger wheel, less sidewall, it's probably going to ride stiffer. So, all right, let's move on to the last question. This one comes from Jake. Jake says, I'm in the market for a lightly used SUV, and I'm looking at a 2016 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid Limited, but the car started its life in Alaska and was driven down to Florida in 2020. It has only 20,000 miles, but it spent more than half of its life in freezing weather. Are there any potential problems I should be aware of? Well, so the first thing I did was I reached out to CR's chief mechanic, John Ibbotson, and he said Toyota tests their vehicles down to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit and back up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So he says, I mean, his point being that they do rigorous testing in these really cold weather situations to test everything about the car, both the way the car drives, but also all the interior materials. Do they withstand really cold temps like that? And he said if the vehicle shows no signs of problems after spending any time in Florida, I would not be concerned. I also want to say that CR, we do recommend that if you're serious about a used car, you really should have it taken to a mechanic that you trust. And in this case, I would say ask that mechanic to not just do the usual going through, but also put it up on a lift and check out the underside of that car. Ryan, I know you know a lot about snow and salt and everything. I couldn't get a definitive answer as to whether Alaska uses salt or not. So some things I saw online seemed like they said they do. Some areas of Alaska seems like they took a lot of pride that they don't. So I'm not sure, but I mean, Ryan, if there was salt involved, now that's a different story, right? As far as corrosion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing I would think about is a vehicle coming from a northern area where there is snow and ice. You know, I know in New England we use salt and calcium chloride and whatever other chemical, like it's going out of style and it's just melting cars around us. You know, rust-wise, it's unfortunate, but it keeps the road safer. It's a good thing. But you know, I found the same thing, Mikey. I couldn't find out exactly what areas do, what don't. And I think it is situational. That would be my first thing, to check out the bottom of that car, make sure there's not a ton of corrosion. If that is an issue or a concern, I mean, he's down in Florida. Maybe look for another car down there. I mean, now you have a car. I sound like a jerk saying that.
No, but Ryan, you never sound
you're
like a
in
jerk.
Florida. Ideally, a car from Florida. I mean, we dream of picking up a southern car or truck because it doesn't have any rust or corrosion like we have up here. So people are always bringing those up north. Try to find something down there, maybe. That's just a thought.
But it's entirely possible that it's just a smoking deal, and he does.
Yeah, and it could be flawless.
Right.
It could be flawless underneath. Even in a salt environment, some people
if
wash
you
them
wash
every day,
the undercarriage on a regular basis, it probably would be okay. But check that undercarriage, and if that's good, then Big John gave it the okay. So we never go against Big John. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to click on the links in the show notes if you want to learn more about the vehicle and the topics we talked about. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, and we'll see y'all next week.